Thank you, everyone, for joining me here on the Radio of Horror show here on WCUW. Tonight, we're talking about Tales from the Other Side, as well as an extensively long history going back even further from 2007 when I met this gentleman at Rock and Shock when he was quoting The Black Waters of Eccles Pond with Sean Clark. We have James Duval on the show with us, also known from Donnydarko and many other films. Thank you for coming on the show with us, James.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Yeah, it's been a while. It's good to see you. It's good to be here.
Your career goes back into the early 90s, which I didn't. I'll be honest with you, man. I didn't know. Like, I think a lot of people like really came into your filmography with Donnydarko, but I didn't know your career went further back into like the early 90s.
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting. I mean, when I started, I did start working on. I was part of the independent film movement in the early 90s. And so indie movies back then were very indie. So to give you an example, I remember doing my first film, and the director's movie before the one I'd done with him played at Sundance Film Festival in '92. And our film just got accepted to Sundance for '94, I believe, early '94. This was in '93. So I was meeting with agents and sort of like, so what do you have coming? I'm like, well, I did this movie with this director, Gregor Rocky, never heard of him, going to this film festival, Sundance. Never heard of it. So it was sort of, now where Sundance is the end all be all, really, I think, for a lot of filmmakers, and has been for the past, since the mid 90s, really, or late 90s, which Donnydarko came out of Sundance.
Right.
So I wouldn't imagine, to be quite honest, it's like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm flattered to be here and flattered that you want to speak with me, because I wouldn't imagine that many people would know, unless you were really into independent film back then. The access to it certainly isn't what it is today. If you heard of something, you couldn't go download it on the internet or look it up. I mean, you had to hunt it down and find it back in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, VHS stores, rental stores, that sort of thing. I mean, it's funny that we're constantly bringing up Blockbuster in the news every 5 minutes, and people are just like, the rental store days of yore. And I'm like, that is never coming back. Everything is at your fingertips to be like, oh, look, phone. Oh, I can watch Donnydarko right now. I can watch Tales from the Other Side right here on, Prime or whatever it's be on.
It's just much easier now, I think, than it's ever been. And you have more available at your fingertips. So it's crazy. It's like, wanting to pick up an old washing machine that you have to rub the stuff, we have that grid, that washboard, and you have to rub your clothes on it instead of using a washing machine where you could just throw it in and let it happen. I understand, the attachment to the old way of doing things, but, sometimes the more modern way of things, including filmmaking and I love shooting with film and working with film, but, there are many advantages to filming with digital that are, kind of difficult. There are pros and cons with everything, but, to be quite honest, shooting on 35 millimeter film, you'd shoot one direction and then, okay, everybody take about an hour and a half, we'll come back and we'll flip around. You know what I mean? You're like, wow, I have to come back and do this in an hour and a half, exactly the same. That's just how it is making movies. But to be quite honest, what I found moving to digital, at least in my experience, was like, all right, we're going to flip around. We'll be ready for you in 5 or 10.
Do you think the offset cost of not having to pay for 35 millimeter film anymore has, without the rental industry putting the money into the coffers of Hollywood, and the cheaper way it is to make movies sometimes, not all movies, I know Avatar and the Avengers and all that stuff are multi-million $200 epic price tags to make, but I got to imagine filming on this device with an entire film like Steven Soderbergh did has to be cheaper than all the canisters of 35 millimeter film, then getting it processed and then having to cut it, Well,
I mean, that's kind of the idea. And certainly it'd be very difficult to make a Marvel film on a phone or a Star Wars movie on a phone, but
I'm sure Disney is planning it with something, you know what I mean?
But I think the thing that goes to show is it's sort of before, if you really wanted to make movies, when I shot my first film with Gregor Rocky, we at the time shot it on 16 millimeter film, and we were using short ends, so you didn't get full 10-minute reels of film. You had 5 minutes or 2 minutes and decide how long these takes were and try to use your film accordingly. I mean, you had to be very economical the way you shot. You didn't just burn stuff. In other words, like you did rehearse, you didn't shoot it until it was ready to go. Now, there is something about that. And there's some, and I love that process, because I come from it. But there's also something to be said with like, shoot the rehearsal, let's just shoot every, and of course it's a lot, I think, for the editor to go through. But in doing that, experimenting in that sense has been quite a joy and quite liberating as an actor. It allows you to do more, which I'm very fond of. I think after 30 years of acting, I'm, still very much in the experimental phase. I'm still I know what works, but I'm trying to figure out new avenues and new twist characters and new ways of approaching things. And let's see what happens if we approach it, do something like this, or let's see what happens if we do a film like this. So that being said, I think digital gives you the liberty to experiment.
You've had some mainstream work before, like you've done what was it, Hawaii Five-0, right? And you've done a couple of big budget films, but never been like the lead. But most of your filmography is in the independent market. Do you always want to stay in the independent market?
No, I mean, to be honest, I am very rather fond of work. I had an incredible time working on Hawaii Five-0. I entered a well-oiled machine, so I came in on the 5th season, but I knew a few of the actors from years before in other projects, but I entered a well-oiled machine. And I love working on independent film and I love experimenting with stuff, but sometimes it can be grating and it can be challenging and it can be difficult when you're working with people who don't know how to move, but don't have the experience. In other words, because we're all just trying to work on this passion project, which means that not everybody you get involved is the best at what they do. And that's okay too, as long as everyone's doing their best. But I will say there is something to be said about walking on a set where everyone's pretty incredible what they do, and entering a well-oiled machine is a joy. Since I come from theater originally, so I love to rehearse and be prepared when I walk in to the set. It means I found it to be very the opposite of frustrating. In other words, like I could walk in and just sort of do my thing and walk out, and there's a certain joy in not trying to make things work all the time. That being said, like I said, I still love to experiment. I don't always like that either. So really, I'm just lucky to be working. The independent film world is the world that contacts me. I haven't had an agent quite a few years, so I'm very lucky to be working. For some reason, no agents want to represent. They never want to represent.
Well, we can Google why. Why can't James Duval hold an agent?
I think they think I'm against.
It's all over Reddit. What did you do?
I know years ago I was very anti-mainstream and anti-television and big movies, but for me, it's all jobs now. I like to do the big jobs. I like to do the little jobs. Of course, the truth being told, I'm going to work for the people who hire me. Right. And since I don't really get the opportunity to audition for a lot of these bigger jobs. I mean, I've never auditioned for a Marvel movie or Star Wars, or I've never auditioned for it, even come close to audition. Really, because I don't have an agent, I'm just fortunate people reach out to me, and because of my past resume, and I'm trying to continue. I'm skating on that, to be honest.
Let's face it, the Mandalorian Boba Fett era of Star Wars is the cult favorite actor place to be, because every 5 minutes there's like, I would
love nothing more to be on that, but I don't even audition for it.
I mean, they're definitely reaching out to people that are constantly like, hey, look who it is, it's Michael Biehn, or hey,
I mean, I don't know if I'm necessarily
what just happened on Obi-Wan. It's what's his name from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, Flea. It was great to see Flea. I mean, if they reach out to me, like I said, I work basically because people reach out. But...
there is so I don't know how much of a Star Wars fan you are, but in Marvel Comics, there was a green bunny bounty hunter in Star Wars.
I actually remember that back in the 70s. That's from the very early comics.
Yeah.
You remember? I had that. I own that comic specifically.
Yeah, maybe you could be like, hey.
Of course, of course I'd do anything. I'd wear a mask. I mean, I'm not adverse. I'm not adverse to working, but I will also say I love the independent film world, which is, why I continue to say yes to a lot of projects, just because they're doing something different, or these people are trying to make something that otherwise wouldn't be made. I have a couple movies out right now, Tales from the Other Side being one of them. That's actually just about to come out. as well as Without Ward, Martin Landau's last film, one of his last films, and another movie I did called I Challenger, all which I'm extremely proud of, but all very, very different.
Yeah. The film you're working on now is another anthology film. You've done anthology films before because you were like in Tales from Halloween. And this one
And American Nightmares.
Yes, American Nightmares. This one's about three kids sought out to have the most legendary Halloween night ever. Again, another Halloween movie. And their trick-or-treat adventures bring them to the home of a local town called Scary Mary. Oh, to the local legend, Scary Mary. So already right there, you get to do a Halloween movie without the constrictions of some guy in a white mask hunting his sister or not his sister, depending on what continuity it is. And that's what I loved about this movie, because the fact that it's a Halloween theme movie without it being a Halloween franchise movie. I always wish that, just like Friday the 13th, you never had to worry about Friday the 13th, and the words Halloween will always be synonymous with hockey mask guy and William Shatner, you know.
That's so great to hear it, and the reaction has so been, you know, I'm pleasantly surprised to hear the reaction so positive for the film, as you just expressed. That really kind of tickles me, you know, because it's exactly what you said. I don't think that our story has anything to do with Halloween other than it's psychological thriller, and if you wanted to dress up as a crazy person for Halloween, maybe we could inspire, maybe go to get a crazy person gown or straight jacket. But the story in itself, yes, is not revolved around actual Halloween.
Yeah. The you have, so it's 6 stories, right, and told into one film.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is I when I was doing it, I knew we were making a short piece, you know, and I know the writer, and I didn't know his father, but I know the writer and I knew the writer's son, who also worked on the project, James Cullen Bresick,
Right.
and you know, as well as the directors of the piece. So I knew we were doing this sort of thing. So what was kind of funny was when they reached out, and you know, because we just shot it in August, and when they reached out to me and was sort of, oh, you know, we have these interviews for you for Tales from the Other Side, and as you know, I've been very fortunate to be working quite a bit. So I've probably done 10 movies in the last year and a half or 2 years. And I was sort of thinking about it. I'm like, okay, I know I've worked a lot.
Well, that's good,
I
considering
know that
COVID crashed everything down for a good year. And yeah, you might have
it
had
stopped it for me for a good 4 or 5 months. But as soon as it picked up in the summer of 2020, I started going again.
That's good. That's good, because a lot of people were worried, like, oh no, what are we going to do? How are we going to make money? What about not just like the actors and directors, but what about like the catering and all those people and things?
It was. I got to be honest. 2020 was a slow start. I think I only did 2 or 3 projects, and then in 2021 I did, you know, 6 or 7. In August last year I did 3 alone, including this short, literally in a month. So it was sort of
right. You don't have to be in the whole thing either. So you can take time out to go from
I can be in a movie where I was really only there for 2 or 3 days, or even 1 day, and then I'm done, and then I jump to something else. Because if it can fit into my schedule, and it's something it doesn't even have to be challenging all the time. I'm a working actor, and so to be a working actor, if you have the time, why not? You know, that's what acting school was for, to keep the muscles exercised, to oil the machine. So why not keep the machine oiled and just work? Like, oh, if you're going to pay my rate, I'll come down for the day. It's a fun little character, and I'm working with some fun actors, and you know, and so it's the idea of trying to work as much as I can, and with the idea that I'll become a better actor, and that I've become a better actor over time. I really do love being in front of the camera and working with other actors and collaborating with filmmakers, and you know, so like I said, you know, I was going back to think about it when they were asking me, so we have some interviews for Tales from the Other Side, and I'm thinking, because our segment's called Either Or, and I didn't know it was part of an anthology film yet. So I'm sitting here going through, I'm like, well, you know, there's Amityville Karen, there's I Challenger, there's Without Ward, there's Filthy. Gosh, when did I make a movie called Tales from the Other Side? This is killing me. I don't remember making this project. And then it hit me. Oh, and when I looked at it and they said anthology, I'm like, oh, it has to be Either Or, because the rest were all features. So that has to be it, which was, to be quite honest, a pleasant surprise, because I am a fan of the anthologies. You said, like Tales from Halloween, and I even, like, from way back when, I really, really loved Trick or Treat. I thought that's so good. And every few years, you know, when they make these little anthology movies, I get a little giddy joy out of watching them. So I was quite excited to find out we were part of this anthology. I'm excited to see Vernon Wells' piece. I heard that's really quite fun. And like you said, the central story in it, the witch taking these kind of kids in and telling these stories. So I haven't seen it, so I don't know how this ends up. So I'm kind of really excited.
It comes out this Tuesday, I believe. Yeah, because today is the 5th and it has the June 7th release date on it.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna be watching. I'm excited to watch this, actually. You know, to be quite honest, I just also finished another movie last week called Free LSD. And it's revolves around this super group off. They're like this hardcore group with.
Are you we live in Massachusetts, so we were one of the right after Colorado, I think, like Vermont, we were one of the first states to be like legalize marijuana, and now we have like what 30 states legalized it or something.
Oh, it's you guys. We thought we were great when we were first medical, and you guys beat us to the legalization. And then you're thinking, all right, California, you're dragging your feet now. You used to be progressive, you're dragging your feet. So yeah, no, it's been incredible because I'm going to equate that to helping me quit smoking quite a few years ago now. Because I remember I guess I got my medical prescription in 2008, but I always said if it became legal, I would never, you wouldn't see me smoking tobacco again unless it was like a European spliff or whatever.
Right.
Right.
I remember once at a con, somebody asking me how can they get weed, and this was like in the O's, so it was like maybe 2008 or 2009, and I wouldn't even begin to I was so baffled. I knew a couple people that did, but it was so hard. But now if someone asked me that, I'd be like, yeah, you got $20, I'll go to the dispensary for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, or they can go themselves as long as they're over 21. I mean, it's
right?
funny.
Or if they're like a guest like you at a table, and you're like, can you like go to the thing next door and just get me some gummy bears? I need to get through the day.
The thing is, it serves me well when I'm traveling and working out of town, and I'm smoking in a place where it's not legal.
Yeah, because it is still a federal crime now. Yeah,
I mean, I've got my my recommendations, so I technically qualify for medicating, but in that sense, I'm still from that generation, even though it's legal here and everybody walks down the street smoking. I'm still, whatever. Hey, Jimmy, you want some? I'm like, sure. I'm like, it's legal. Oh yeah, I knew that.
Tim Smith came to town a few years ago before again it blew up, and he was just like, "You guys have legalized marijuana. That's awesome. I have to come here."
Yeah, I'm going to say it is a nice advantage of being here.
The sponsor for this radio show for a few years was a weed / witchcraft store.
Really? Well, that's one of the movies I have now. I Challenger is a weed movie, a stoner comedy, which I'm very, very proud of.
Just a stoner comedy, no supernatural stuff, no monsters, no
monsters. But I'll just say this: it's a stoner comedy about this kid who's not quite a kid anymore. I'm in my 40s and I'm a gamer and I'm selling marijuana to underage kids who can't get it from the dispensary yet. That's how I make my money.
So as if you were back in high school.
Yeah, it's been a kind of a bad run of luck for my character. I used to be a coder and a programmer, and I basically, to cut a long story short, robot took my job. Automation.
Oh, the damn robots.
Yeah, so my character's pretty distraught and looking at,
Just give it a few years. We'll stop complaining about illegals and take that however you will, taking the jobs, and it'll be about robots taking the jobs.
Well, the funny thing is the misadventures of my character start off with him and the people he plays video games with online, and Margaret Cho's character who he meets on Tinder, and what you sort of...
Margaret Cho, wow.
Yeah, she came in and she's fantastic. I'm still
she's
so
a legend.
Yeah, she came into us. Well, we go on this. I don't want to give it away. If you can watch the trailer for I Challenger on YouTube or whatnot. But let's just say it was a Tinder date, and it does not go the way I expected. Like most things for me in the film. But you begin to discover that myself, my best friend Logan, played by incredible Coy Stewart, Margaret Cho's character, nobody's really telling you who we really are. Everyone's catfishing. We're all pretending to be something else, sort of. And so online, we're like this sort of ideal person, except for Tina Majorina's character, who's fantastic, who I buy my marijuana from at the dispensary. And I come up with this crazy idea looking for luck when my best friend tells me all I need is a little luck, that after watching these Russian burial videos, of course, I'm just going to bury myself underground for 24 hours and live stream it for luck. Because I mean, what else would you do for luck?
What are
So,
you a you go to all these conventions and you do, you know, you've been on all these film sets. Are you a collector of anything yourself? Because people are a collector of you, of things.
I mean, I have a little doll of me back here that I got from the sculptors from NECA way back in the day, Randy.
Uh-huh.
Randy and Nicole, they were amazing. I met them at Comic-Con because I am quite a fan. So I met them, which is where I met Sean Clark before. You know, I didn't even think people would want my autograph. I just went to these things as a fan.
Yeah.
You know, we used to have the Shrine Convention here in the 90s that I used to go to on once a month on Sundays. And I went to Comic-Con in the 90s and watched that steadily grow. Just, you know, because in the 70s and 80s, it was very, very much a culty thing and on the fringe. If you liked horror, if you liked sci-fi, if you liked superheroes, that definitely was not in the mainstream. I mean,
No.
Superman the movie did very well, but liking those things was not a mainstream thing to like.
Right. Can you imagine if like Christopher Reeve was still with us today, the conventions he'd be doing, you know? Because of how big comic books have become. And the fact that, you know, they always want these comic book people to come back and play the character they love, or the old characters to come back. You know, they and not just comic books, but, you know, Star Wars and Star Trek.
Superman, Christopher Reeve's Superman, yeah. He
So,
blew it wide open for comic book movies. That really was the beginning for comic.
You haven't been in a comic book movie before, right? You haven't done a voiceover for anything? No?
No, I mean, I've done voiceovers. I did voiceover for
But you didn't do a comic book voiceover.
BoJack Horseman was quite fun.
Yeah, BoJack Horseman. You were on BoJack Horseman.
And then I've done a couple of pilots. I did it's too bad it never came out. It was right, you know, because I didn't think it was politically incorrect, but you know, we had the Me Too movement right when we were making this animated cartoon about what it's like to work on a porn set.
I honestly don't find that because think about like Family Guy and American Dad and
I thought it was brilliant.
Big Mouth or South Park. They're still getting away with stuff that I'm just like, oh my god, they said that. Oh well,
I thought it was brilliant. And it was a lot of fun.
And social media is not blowing up because Family Guy made an abortion joke. You know, they're not. It's not being ripped apart nearly as much. Now, if it was like on, I don't know, Star Wars or something, yeah, it'd be a bigger deal because Star Wars gets political for war reasons, but not, you know, that kind of reason. But whereas like South Park and Family Guy and
definitely
Robot Chicken, they didn't do a Robot Chicken Donnydarko, did they ever?
You know, I'm not aware if they have or not, but the fact that there's a doll of it or toy figures of it, I mean,
yeah,
Seth very well may have. I mean, I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah, I don't quite
Seth
remember.
is very, very liberal about using his action figures and
that. Yeah, right.
Great extent, like it things I never and I thought I had a crazy imagination, but beyond what I ever would have.
You have the bunny costume. You said over there you're going to tilt the camera around.
Well, yeah, here it's not quite the costume, but what I have is here. I'll bring you all around for it. I do. I'm kind of looking over.
So
when I'm like sitting here, I have like my guardian angel or my alter ego, I should say.
Do you have to put something over that? That's not your bedroom, right? You're not like sleeping with that thing staring at you while you're sleeping, are you?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I can fold the bed out here, and I do sleep in here sometimes. And
that must be so creepy.
Yeah, you know, I never really thought about it just because I played it, you know, and I'm so used to it. I guess I can say that I have had someone over, you know, a couple of years ago, maybe, and then
they ask you to put did they ask you to put the costume on and do things?
He got up at 3 a.m. and was like, "Can you turn that thing or get it out of the room?"
Oh, okay, thank God. I thought you were going in a different direction with that.
No. I mean, I wouldn't have been.
I mean, because you work with.
Never considered myself a furry before, but hey, like I said, I like to experiment.
Right. There's like a joke on a show where a woman asks her boyfriend or the guy to put on like the Michael Myers mask, and Michael Myers played her uncle in the movie. It was on a Holliston, Adam Green.
That's great. Adam's great.
But that was a complete parody of the entire, like, you know, fan genre kind of thing of like, here, put the mask on.
Yeah, he's smart.
What do you have any conventions coming up that you're going to be at?
I know that someone asked if I wanted to do convention, and Sean's my booking agent, so it didn't come from Sean. And I told him I was open to it, and all of a sudden I was booked at a convention in Houston, I think it was. And I didn't even have a chance to talk with Sean about it because I believe I'm filming, so I don't think I can go, unfortunately. I mean,
You got to come back up to Massachusetts.
at any time, most of the time, if someone invites me, I would love to come out. To be quite honest, besides that one where they didn't even ask, they just kind of put me in it, but which is flattering to me. But like I said, I don't really get asked to do them. If all they got to do is give Sean Clark a call and say, hey, I'd love to have Jimmy to show, but no one's calling him or calling me to call him. So, hey, you guys, if if I'm not, but like I said, only reason I cancel out is if I'm working, and I've been lucky to be working. So I have 2 movies coming up in July and August.
Full movies that you got to film?
Pardon?
Full movies, full feature lengths?
Yeah, one of them I started during the pandemic last year, and then that damn first it was the IATSE strike that didn't happen.
Uh-huh.
And then it was the Omicron surge, and now we're finally getting back to it. But we're going to finish this feature that we started last year with Michael Madsen and Chris Browning, who plays my older half brother, and Natasha Henstridge, and
Cool. Wow.
Mike Starr. Yeah, Mike Starr. It's called The First Circle, and it's sort of based on Dante's Inferno. All our characters are trapped in hell, but we don't know it.
Did you ever play that video game a few years ago? It came out like 2008.
I did.
Yeah.
There was this game, believe it or not, back in the 90s I used to love on my early Mac called Build a Demon.
Build a Demon? Wow.
They ate souls, yeah. It was like kind of like a Pac-Man through a maze almost.
There's a board
Build a
game.
Demon, hilarious.
There's a board game based on those T-shirts you might see at like Hot Topic or Newberry Comics or Spencer Gifts, where it's got the kids going, doing something very like it's done up to be like a very 50s style promo ad, and the kids are like, oh, let's summon a demon, or easy bake oven, but it's like they're putting a cat in the oven or something like that. And they have one where they've turned them into board games now. One of them is called Summon a Demon, where you buy children's souls to summon the demons that are in your hand. And once you have all the demons laid out on the board in your hand, then you win the game.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about that through the years. This game, Soul Reaver, where he sucked the souls out of people.
Yeah, that's the vampire. That's part of the blood, the Legacy of Kain series.
Yes, I really loved Soul Reaver quite a bit, I have to say.
Yeah, I remember those games.
I was
5 of them. And they were going to do an MMORPG based on the whole world, and the game got canceled years ago.
That is very unfortunate because it was pretty brilliant. I thought I was very, very taken by it.
Well, James, we're at the clock on the Zoom call. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and all the best of luck to you with what you got coming up. And again, hopefully we'll see you in Massachusetts sometime for a convention or something, or maybe you'll film up here. Who knows? That would be fantastic as well.
I would love nothing more. I mean, beyond these 2 movies, I'm for hire, everybody.
Can we get a soundbite from you introducing Radio of Horror?
Good evening, everybody. This is James Duval, and you're listening to Radio Horror.
That was perfect. That was great. Most people need me to all right, can you write me out something? I'm an actor. I got to read it like a script.
Let's just say I ad-lib quite a bit, so I'm very good. If I could say it differently, I mean, I could ad-lib more if you want, but you're like, can you just say this? And I'm like,
no, that's totally fine. Here, real quick. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.